sflogicninja here, or you can call me David Earl. I don't care. It's late. I'm very tired. Oh, tomorrow's gonna hurt, but I made a promise. So, there's been some questions about vocals, and one of my favorite artists that I like to work with, I mean, if she's my favorite artist, of course I like to work with her, is Artemis. And this is a tune called Begin Again that we wrote together. And she's just got a really lovely voice, and I just want you to hear some of the vocal parts, and then I'm going to kind of deconstruct how I went through them. It's always kind of terrifying to open up old sessions because I know I'm going to find things that I'm going to tell myself, why the hell did you do that? And I know I'm going to do that here, but let's just have a quick listen.
Feel it in your body, something getting into you. Feel it in your heart, just might move you to begin something, begin again.
So as you hear, she has just an absolutely lovely, sweet voice. And later on down here, I do some little effects when we get into the big outro bit. So let's just have a quick listen to that. So you can hear these little like radio voices going on in the background. Yeah, so let's just talk about vocals for a minute, vocal production specifically, but I just want to talk about vocals in general. The first thing about getting a good vocal is to have a good vocalist who sings in tune. Artemis really, really does. She sings very well in tune, and she's also really good. You can see her doubling herself here, and it looks pretty much identical. She's really a pretty amazing vocalist, and she has a really unique tone on the mic. And many years I've gone and tried to find the perfect mic for her, and done a lot of experimentation. I don't even remember which mic we landed on for this. I think it may have been a U87. And it's kind of interesting when I look at the channel strip that's on her, because there's some things that oh God, why did I put a Renaissance compressor before a 1176? But anyway, that's okay. You know, project's done. It came out pretty well. It sounds pretty good. And let's just talk about kind of how I approached this vocal and the double and these vocal effects at the end. Well, having a good vocalist that sings in tune means that usually you don't have to do too much. You don't have to like move heaven and earth to make a good vocal. But let's just solo this vocal for a minute, and in the purely terrifying fashion, listen to it without anything on it. So this is without any effects.
Feel it in your body, something getting into you.
Every vocal,
Begin something, begin again.
every vocal has its own challenges, right? Every vocal tone, every mic placement, every project has its own kind of special, unique character. And there's no way that I could tell you like one specific technique that's going to apply to everything. But there are some things that I do right off the bat. And what's also interesting when I go back in time and look at pieces that I worked on, like this Renaissance compressor, that was my jam back in the day, and I still use it sometimes. It's just a really awesome compressor, I have to say. I'm using a very mild ratio. It's only 2.5 to 1. So from those of you who remember my compression video, that means that the volume, if it passes the threshold, the volume's going to be roughly a half of what it would normally be once the audio passes this threshold. And then the output here, the output gain, I'm able to turn up because we've done some gain reduction. And you can see that I'm really aiming throughout this vocal. I'm really aiming it for it to do no more than like 3 dB of compression. Then at the end here, there's an interesting thing that happens at this stage of the Renaissance compressor. You see it's yellow up there. Yellow's kind of nice. It adds some natural sort of, I don't want to say distortion because you might think that that's actually clipping or sounding bad, but it's not. It actually is kind of this warmth that happens up there. When it turns red up here, it's actually clipping, so you want to back off of that. But let's hear it with just this little bit of compression on it.
Feel it in your body.
So you can see, especially over here.
Then begin again. Stop, turn it around.
Now I'm going to turn it off.
Begin something, begin again.
You can hear that it also took some of that harshness off the top there.
Begin something, begin again.
So this is a real tone shaper compressor. And it was my jam back in the day. I still use it occasionally, but yeah, it's really good at light compression and tone shaping and just giving some character to the sound. I really love this plugin. I miss it. I should come back to it. Then after that, here's a funny thing that happened. So this is a compressor called an 1176, and it's from UAD, and it's, oh God, it's compressing 12:1. Oh God. I probably have oh God, the attack is low too. Oh Jesus, what am I doing? Okay, well, let's just have a listen.
Begin something, begin again. Stop, turn it around.
Okay, so it must be really working down towards the end. The only reason I would turn my attack down here, and this is kind of interesting, I'm doing forensics on me, and I'm not too happy with what I see so far, but the attack is long enough that, yeah, I'm probably just trying to catch transients.
Getting harder, just might lose control.
Okay, that's probably why I have it, is for all of those parts. Now, there's a combination going on here of compression, and if I open up automation, you'll see that there's automation kind of happening here. It's a pop vocal, so I'm compressing it pretty hard. I'm not writing this quite as hard as I usually do, but you can see that I've made some volume moves, just very slight volume moves everywhere. And the combination of the Renaissance compressor and the UAD 1176, they're working in concert to make this happen. It's just kind of funny. Like, so the Renaissance compressor, this is, let's see, which mode do I have it in? It's in Opto. Yes, Opto. So it's kind of funny. I actually went the opposite way that I normally do now. The Opto compressor is very slow, and it tends to be pretty mild and rather transparent, and also can add a little bit of pleasant distortion characteristics to sound. Since it is being pretty mild, I guess that's okay. And then what I'm doing with the 1176, I think, is when she hits it a little bit harder further in, we can see that she's not hitting the 1176 too hard here.
Begin something.
Which is great, because honestly, if I push this too hard at 12:1, I mean, 12:1, that's extreme, right? That means the amplitude past the threshold of this, well, it's actually not a threshold compressor, but when this starts to compress, you know, the sound is being squashed pretty heavily, and the attack and release on a FET compressor is very, very, very fast. It's usually something I would use more in drums or something that's very transient, or if I use it on a pop vocal, I would turn the attack way up and the release way up, and it would still be very fast, and it would catch transients, but it wouldn't be so harsh. Now, where I think I'm getting away with this, and this is kind of one of those things where I experiment with stuff, and even if it's wrong, I'll use it. Putting this after the Renaissance compressor was just kind of a funny thing. Especially since I didn't do the EQ cuts before I hit them. So that's kind of curious. Once again, forensics on my own audio, and I'm being hard on myself. And this is supposed to be a tutorial. Isn't that awesome? All right, so after that, I have a linear phase EQ. So Why did I choose a linear phase EQ? Because I was stupid. I didn't know the difference between an infinite impulse response EQ and a finite impulse response EQ. Really, I didn't need to use a linear phase EQ. I mean, unless I had cuts all over the place in this song, and then the linear phase EQ was to try and mitigate any phase weirdness that would happen with a lot of low cuts. But yeah, I'm going to have to go into that whole linear phase EQ versus channel EQ later on, because if I start getting into that right now, oh, that's a nightmare. Okay, so now that I'm like thoroughly ripping myself apart, I think this EQ was probably not too bad. From what I see, this is a pretty standard vocal EQ. Now, why was I talking about the placement of the EQ? Well, normally what I would do is pre-compression, I would probably do my cuts, and then post-compression, I would do my tone shaping EQ or anything that I was going to boost. Now, you notice something about this EQ that's kind of curious? There's nothing boosted. And this I actually am okay with. This was a philosophy that I had back in the day. I actually still have it. I like to cut more than boost. I try never to boost if I can do a cut instead. On her voice, she probably has enough high frequency content that I don't need to do it. So I just ended up trying to do cuts at the most offensive frequencies. And boy, I got some weird shit going on here too. But let's just hear what it does.
Begin something, begin again. Stop, turn it around.
I'm going to bypass it.
Begin again. Feeling getting closer, closer all the time.
So it takes a lot of that boxiness out. Cutting the low end also takes plosives like P's like that. It takes that stuff out. And a lot of times when you have a female vocal, there's just not that much going on below 200 hertz that you need to worry too much. You have to be a little careful about taking out the warmth of a vocal, but usually in pop music, and especially in this one, there's a double. And I think on that doubled lead, I'm doing some funky stuff so that the combination of this lead and that double lead, we're getting something interesting. Now, so basically on a EQ for a vocal, cutting out the low end is good. You want to look out for around 2K, like 2K 2100 hertz. Like 2100 hertz is usually where people have this kind of biting quality to their voice, but it's also what can make a vocal cut through a mix. So you just have to be kind of careful about that. All right. Now after that, I have a Q1. So a Q1 is like, I'm doing an additional cut at 1K. So there must have been some problem going on there. Let's kick it out for a second. Oh yeah, you can really hear that. I'm going to play it again without the EQ. And I'll kick it on again. So 1K is a very, very dangerous range. And man, I'm cutting it. Yeah, I'm putting quite a cut on it. 1K is one of those frequencies that is very dangerous to touch, because if you cut out too much of it, then the stuff that you're EQing is not going to cut through. But if there's too much 1K, it is quite possibly the most sensitive range of human hearing. And if you're not very careful about everything between, 1 and 4 or 5K, things are going to get really nutty. So I added this EQ onto there just to, let's see where I was. Yeah, I didn't really have too much going on at 1K here. I was doing kind of a very wide, broad cut, broad EQ around 750. So that Q1 was just taking out that one frequency. It's kind of funny. It's like it must have been really offending me. Oh yeah, there's a weird resonance happening in there. You hear that? Let me kick off that EQ again. It's like it's really weird. And pop that EQ back on.
So
Yeah, that really helps. You know, I bet this was a tube mic. Sometimes tube mics, if they're not warmed up correctly, or if the tube's having some issues, you get this weird kind of sound on them. It's really weird. Sometimes I hear it on the radio on pop songs. You'll hear these tube mics that they're just not right. And they have that kind of strange tonality. The last plugin that I have on this chain is actually an analyzer, which was probably what I was using to try and find the offending frequencies that were driving me nuts. So below that, I have this doubled lead. And I think she doubled it pretty much throughout the whole song. Let's have a listen.
love is getting
No, that's not fair. Giving her a bunch of reverb and stuff. Okay, so let's have a look at what's happening here, because in my... Okay, so here we have Renaissance compressor, but this one is set to electro, which is going to be more like a FET or a VCA compressor, which is very fast. And then I have okay, that's a pretty standard EQ, except I start cutting it way higher. And also this EQ works more kind of like a Pultec EQ. There's going to be a little bit of an effect right at where the cutoff is happening on the low cut. And it just has a different sound. And I think what the sound that I was going for in the double, let me kick this off and kick off the Ren compressor.
love is getting stronger.
Yeah, interesting.
Love is getting strong.
It's almost radio-like. It's totally different. And then if I open up this compressor, this is a very similar setting to what I had on the other one, except we have a very low ratio. It's 4:1. Well, low for a frickin' FET compressor. So check it out. It's interesting. It's 4:1, but the input is higher. So I'm actually feeding it more.
Love is getting stronger.
Like a lot more. Holy smokes. And then after that, look at this. It's our little Q1 again, taking out that 1K weirdness that was going on. Same mic, so same approach, I guess, right?
Love is getting stronger.
And the two of them together, I guess they must be summing up in such a way that I liked the sound.
Getting closer, closer all the time.
Actually, it is kind of working, isn't it?
Stop, turn it around, begin again.
It's so funny. They're so close to each other in volume, but with the effects. So as far as the effects go, this is one of my favorite reverbs of all time, is the Lexicon 224. I had the pleasure of using a 480 XL at a studio one time, and I just fell in love with the Lexicon sound. It's just warm and beautiful and lush. I'm using a large hall. Solo mode means that we are using it. There's not a mix going on. It's just the reverb. I even kept the system noise on. That's really strange. So, and there's a lot of funny things about this. Like you can actually, if you open this up, you can get into these extra parameters. But yeah, 224, one of my favorite vocal reverbs, especially for pop music. So I'm using that. Let's hear what that sounds like.
Stop, turn it around.
So long. My God, that's a long reverb. Okay. It's okay. It's all right. It's okay. Oh, look at this. So if I turn on this bus, it's going to this compressor too. Oh, and look at that. This is a modified vocal limiter preset. Interesting. So this one, it's 12:1, but you see how the attack is really high and the release is really high, and I'm feeding it a crap load. So this is compressing the hell out of that vocal, and it's running in tandem with the solo vocal. So it's interesting because this is being fed as well, and this is feeding the reverb. Holy smokes. Okay, check this out.
Stop, turn it around.
Now I'll turn this off for a second.
Stop, turn it around.
That sounds good.
Stop, turn it around.
So the idea behind New York compression or parallel compression is that you're creating this weird kind of vocal noise floor. Down here, I've got this audio that's staying pretty much the same in volume. Like her vocal is pretty much staying at the same level. And it's not jittering a lot because I have that really long attack and release. And what that does is it just sort of offers this support to the lead vocal and pushes it out front, which is cool. That's another thing that's adding to this vocal character. And when we were listening earlier and I was like, oh man, the lead vocal and the doubled vocal are like really close in volume. I guess I like that. Well, not anymore, because when we use the parallel compression, the lead vocal is now going to be way out in front of the doubled lead vocal. I can talk. I speak good. Dude, it's late. I can't believe I'm doing this. Oh my God, I'm 20 minutes into it. I hope I'm not just boring the shit out of you. Or boring the hell out of you. Excuse me. Did I cuss? That was the first time I cussed on the sflogicninja channel. Oh. Okay. Well, there's a first for everything. So here's the compression. We got that New York compression going on the vocal, and then we have bus 8, which is probably, yeah, okay. Another reverb. So, yeah. That's interesting. That makes no sense at all. Why did I do that? Why did I do that? Guys, why did I do that? I have this one. So there's a reverb. It's 3 seconds long. It's freaking huge. System noise and everything. Oh, let's listen to it. Let's see what happens.
Stop, turn it around, begin again.
Well, it's doing something, I guess. Let's compare them again. Here we go. The David Earl forensic. This is just like, it's just crazy. Let me see if I can open them right next to each other. All right. So there's the bus 1 reverb. Here's the bus 2 reverb. Now that was the chorus, but there's no automation.
All the time, love is getting stronger. Just might move your mind to.
Okay, bizarre. So all of the settings that I see here are very subtle changes. Well, I do see a little bit more mid in the shorter reverb. So I guess it's just, but it's the same algorithm. So this is a little bizarre. This is something I never do. I'm totally like flummoxed. Don't know why I did it. I can hear it's making a difference. I can hear that maybe I did like some mode enhancement or something. I mean, this one's got the rear outs and this one doesn't. So, I mean, there are subtle changes, but holy smokes, man, that's pretty subtle.
All the time, love is getting stronger.
That's just a lot of reverb. Okay. So that's interesting. All right, let's go to the doubled lead and see what's going on there. It's going to bus 1. So bus 1 is like, that's the main vocal reverb. That's the main long reverb. So for some reason on the lead vox, I went to that second lexicon and it's just giving, at the time when I mixed this, which was probably 7 years ago, maybe not quite that far. Yeah, 6 years ago or something. For some reason, I made that decision and I do things deliberately. So there must have been a reason for it, but that's not what I would do now. I'm usually pretty old school and I try to have a long, a medium and a short reverb. And then I have other little like very like specific reverbs for specific functions on specific instruments. But that's kind of interesting. Now let's hear what they sound like. This is with all of the effects going on.
Stronger, just might move your mind to.
And now let's hear it in with the music.
All the time, love is getting stronger, just might move your mind to.
Okay, there's some weird things about this mix because I opened it years later, and of course, this was done in like Logic 9, and I had a whole different set of kits and stuff. So I'm hearing some weirdnesses, but I think that you get the idea as far as the vocal goes. Yeah, so the combination of all those things were what brought this vocal together, and this is a pretty standard vocal chain. I mean, as far as the EQs are concerned. The compression is a little weird. Like I said, normally what I do is I would cut all the low end and all the stuff that I didn't want before I hit a compressor, but it is a vocal, so I mean, there's probably not that much going down there anyway. If this was a drum kit or something, I would probably do I know I would do the cuts before the compressor and stuff like that. But in doing the forensic of my own song, which is kind of hilarious, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I can see why it works because her voice doesn't have that much down there. Then when we get over here, we have some interesting vocal effects. So I like doing like distance vocal effects and doing some vocal things that just put the vocal in a different space in an interesting way. And I have this thing here called distance vocal. And any vocal that you want to have sound like a telephone or like you're going through a cell phone or something, just put a low cut and a high cut and have them both like sort of meet in this mid-range somewhere. Some people will put a resonance peak there to really give it a little flavor. And then it looks like what I did is I used a pretty standard vocal channel. Yeah, so I used a vocal preset on this one. I'm using like so electro is going to be, like I said, VCA or FET. It's going to be faster. Still using a fairly mild ratio, 2.49 to 1. Then I've got, this is the same, you see the EQ curve? It's very similar to the linear phase EQ that we saw earlier. So I'm doing something pretty similar, but I didn't have to go after the 1K because I knew I was going to be doing this thing to it, you know, doing all this crazy EQ to it. It is feeding the vocal reverb, but also it's going to Revolver, which is a, this is McDSP's impulse response generated reverb. And I remember I had just got this, and I wanted to try it out. So this is the first song that I tried it out on. But let's just have a listen to it. First, I'll play it, the vocal dry, and then we'll play it going through those effects. And it's interesting how the vocal can almost sound like it's been kind of gauzy, like something's in the way. Now I'll pop that Ren EQ on. And that Renaissance compressor, you hear how much it changed? Now all that's fine, but then check out what happens when I put this EQ on. Interesting, huh? You can almost hear squawk, like a squawky sound, like you're going through a cell phone. So yeah, the interaction of all those units together is making that happen. Then we go through our reverb, and then I've got Revolver. Let's see what that sounds like. And then when we put it in the background of this track, and then this is a fake delay. So basically I do the same kind of processing on these two vocals and they're panned. So then we get this.
Turn it around, begin again something, begin again.
So there you go. There's a breakdown of a vocal and kind of, you know, my approach to doing vocals. The big takeaways here are, so EQ and compression are the main tools of the trade. And usually when you see a EQ curve on a vocal, it's going to look something like this. It's going to have a lot taken down below. You're looking to get rid of the mud around 200 hertz. And then the real shaping and what's going to be different from vocal to vocal is what you do in the mid-range. Because the mid-range is the most important thing that you're getting out of your vocal. And in this particular vocal, I don't know, I didn't add any top end to the vocal. I don't think it really needed it. And I think I was going for a specific kind of nostalgic sound, so I wasn't really doing that. And then, of course, we had that 1K thing that you heard about, the sound in the vocal that, I cut out. So it's good to, usually what I would do, though, like a sort of more traditional path would be to have your faster compressor first. Well, take your, problem-solving EQ first, then go through a fast compressor, then have like a tone-shaping EQ, then have a nice slow compressor to just kind of even things out a bit, and then do your volume automation. And the volume automation, actually, I would even do that before compression. Honestly, if you do a really good vocal ride, you don't use all that compression. Like, I'm being very mild. Like, this is not, that's nothing. If you want to see somebody doing amazing stuff with a fader, Bruce Swedien or Sweden, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. He's the guy who did Michael Jackson. And it's really kind of funny. I heard this quote. He said, "This is my compressor." And he just held up his forefinger. So anyway, there you go. There's a forensic of a vocal. And did I miss anything? It said EQ on your compression. Oh, yeah. The lexicon, oh yeah. Yeah, I don't have any delays in this. Kind of funny. I actually go for delays more than reverb these days a lot. I really like using delays because they keep everything very clear and your mix doesn't get very muddy because you use delays. Maybe next time we hang out, I'll show you a different session and how I approached it using delays and stuff. But, oh my God, I'm so incredibly tired. Oh my God, I gotta be up early in the morning. Anyway, woe is me. Have a great day or night or whatever's going on, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.
Feeling getting closer.